Well, hello, everybody. It is Romania Black. And if you are listening to this and going, Dear God, my voice has been coming in and out for much of today. I've had a little bit of laryngitis, and I know what you're going to be saying. You're going to be like, Romania, you need to take some days off, but I don't want to wait on content when I feel perfectly fine, except for my voice. So I am recording episode 2 of Bocchi the Rock with a little bit of a raspy voice, but I promise you that episode 3, I should be back to form. I'm just going to record this today and then not speak for the rest of the evening. So that should help out a lot. And plus, what has actually helped is that my coworker suggests that I have a margarita. She said that her coworker did that and it cured her laryngitis quite quickly. So I don't know if that's true or not, but bottoms up. We're going to go with it for now. But I'll probably have some tea with honey after this to rehydrate myself. But yeah, I've really enjoyed Bocchi the Rock so far. The only one I remember other than Bocchi, because I was off for a week on a trip before I got back to record, which is why my voice is scratchy because of the trip, is that Ijichi is the drummer that has been integral integral in the crew and everything. So I'm pretty excited about it. I really want to see what Bocchi comes up with now that she's in the band. She's dealing with some things. She's trying to deal with the fact that she has this online persona that her bandmates know about, but she can't say anything, or she doesn't feel inclined to, or doesn't want to. And that is an emotion that is very relatable. I coach a speech team, and on the way back from our trip, they were talking about YouTubers and content creation and reactions, and I wanted so bad to mention it, but I was like, no, don't mention your channel. That's weird. You're a coach. That's like a weird boundary thing. And one of the students on the team knows about my channel, but has, made a vow not to say anything because I don't want that really public. So y'all know how that goes. But anyway, so I apologize if my voice is like shot. I promise I will be in better health and spirits for episode 3. So, but I really wanted to watch episode 2. I had nothing else going on tonight. Nothing sounded good. And I was like, I really just want to watch episode 2 of Bocchi the Rock. So I hope that's okay. And I hope that we can still talk about the episode and have a discussion. And it'll just be nasally ASMR Romania for episode 2 of Bocchi the Rock. I am in my little introvert shut-in era, so we shall see. But with that being said, we are going to go ahead and start this episode. So thank you all so much for all the support and kindness. I'm really excited for this episode. I'm sorry my voice is scratchy, but I promise it will be better for episode 3. So with that being said, we are going to see what is going on this episode. I'm super excited. I want to go ahead and make sure it's all ready to go. Got my subtitles. Yay. So we're going to start episode 2 of Bocchi the Rock. And we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. I'm not sure if my friend was correct about the tequila helping, so we have some tea to kind of follow up with. It's like the most pathetic laugh ever. Oh my God. So yeah, I'm sorry that discussing this, I'm going to sound absolutely ridiculous and wretched. So I'm going to go ahead and apologize for that. And honestly, I'm going to give my voice such a rest after this discussion, I promise. But with that being said, oh my gosh. So with that being said, we are going to talk about this episode because there is a lot of stuff I want to talk about. And hopefully y'all can just forgive me for having like smoker voice, as I've never smoked a cigarette. I take that back. I smoked half a cigarette in college in a moment of deep, anxious anxiety and despair as I was finishing up my thesis in undergrad. I smoked half a cigarette and realized it was stupid and gave the rest of the pack of cigarettes I bought to my roommate because that's where I was. So I can relate a bit to our poor girl Bocchi. I think a lot of what she does in this episode is hilarious. And damn, I'm sorry my voice is so wrecked. But lessons have been learned today. Lessons have been learned. Okay. Oh my gosh. So lessons have been learned. And I don't know if I should just whisper or but I really liked this episode a lot. I loved Bocchi like struggling with her anxiety of figuring out like what do I do? When do I go in? Oh my god, this voice. This voice is something. But I really enjoyed it. I think the most so far is just how supportive that both Ichiji and Rio are, because they are insanely supportive and they're so nice and I love them to pieces and they're just there for her so much, to the point where you're just like, this is amazing. You are such good friends for her. But let's get into this. So they decide that they're going to have a meeting and talk about being a band. And I like that they do the loin instead of line, which I've seen other shows. I've seen other shows use line, so I don't know why they felt the need to like copyright it, but whatever. So anyway, I like the fact that Bocchi's like, this is the first time she's really had friends that she can talk to and they be like real people and not like a parasocial thing. Or like family. You'd think that would help. But one thing that I do like is that Bocchi's journey to tackling her anxiety is not something it's not something that's really easy for her, and it's something she still struggles with even as she is working through, man, this discussion is sounding wretched, okay? So, okay, we're gonna get through it. I'm so sorry. Okay. Oh man. Okay. You know what? I may actually pause this and redo the discussion when my voice is better, because I don't want to strain it anymore and I want to give you all a good discussion. So we're just going to pause this and come back to it when I feel a little bit better. Does that sound good? Let's do that. Okay. We're going to try this again. With a little more volume this time. I'm not at 100%, but I feel like I'm much better than yesterday. Because I did want to finish this discussion, and I promised you all I won't record anything else until I feel a lot better. But I did feel like my vocal cords were good enough to talk about this episode. Way better than the first couple minutes yesterday, so thanks for dealing with that. So I want to talk about this episode now that I have more clarity and more of a voice. But yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed this episode. We might as well get into it. Like I talked about before I had to close out the video, I really like how supportive Ichiji and Rio are with Bocchi. I think that for Bocchi, it's really hard. And what I like about her character so much is that she is so relatable. I feel like, especially to a lot of people that watch anime, but a lot of people I feel like in Gen Z, I feel like a lot of people that are like maybe younger millennials, hell, I feel like even Gen X or older millennials, there is a part of our lives where we do or can get imposter syndrome, or we feel like we don't click with people, or that we feel like all eyes are on us, or that we feel kind of like we're letting down people with our actions. I feel like all of us at least go through a moment like that at least one time in our lives. And for Bocchi, she's experiencing this like all the time. So she's living with this imposter syndrome that she has this presence online, but when she gets to actually face-to-face interactions, she feels so awkward and out of place. And I think that a lot of people can relate to Bocchi. There is a sense, like I talked about last episode, that Bocchi could be. I don't know if Bocchi is neurodivergent or if she's just really socially awkward and she just doesn't know what to do in crowds. And I don't like to use that word awkward because awkward makes it seem like it's a negative thing. And I don't think it's wrong to not be able to, be a giant social butterfly like Ichiji is. It seems to me like Ichiji's sister is kind of like Bocchi a little bit. She seems a lot more reserved and quiet herself, but she kind of, I tell people that on the team that I coach, you kind of have to fake it till you make it when especially if you are an introvert and to perform extroversion, because like I've said in this show and other shows, I'm really an introvert at heart. I like being at home. I get a lot of energy just doing things by myself. I'm kind of like Rio in a sense that I'm a loner. I'm fine with doing things by myself, but I do like being in a group. But when I'm in a group, I tend to kind of shy away. And so when I'm by myself talking to you all on camera, I can be extroverted because I'm getting energy from this space around me. Whereas if you saw me at a comic convention, I'd probably be like, oh, yeah, sure. But I'd be performing a lot of extroversion. And then as soon as, I walked away, I'd be like, okay, back down into my people watching, kind of like absorbing the energy around me. I feel like my best friend, she's an extrovert. So she gains energy from others. And I feel like others can drain energy from me. So I get a lot more energy from being by myself. And I will get better after this episode, I promise. But so they have this meeting that down in the basement. And I personally think that Ichiji's sister and the woman running the soundboard might be in a ship. I think that might be a possibility. I could be wrong, but I think that might be a possibility. But I think they could be shippable. I'm here for the ship at the moment, so we'll see where that ends up going. But I like the idea that poor Bocchi struggles to figure out when to go in, and that's when she sees Rio and Ichiji, and they take her downstairs into the basement there, into the bar. Now we do find out, oh my gosh, we do find out in this episode that Ichiji's family actually lives in the apartments above the bar and the restaurant, which I really liked that world building that we got with the bar. So it's kind of like a family business that the sister is in charge of. I'm very curious if the sister as a manager, if she's happy with what she's doing, or if because she kind of comes across, her and Ichiji are very different. Ichiji is bubbly and optimistic and super happy. And not that the sister doesn't seem happy, but she does kind of seem very reserved and maybe she doesn't like the job there. So I'm going to be curious if we get anything with that. Also, I'm realizing that the three of them give off kind of Powerpuff Girls vibes, right? I don't know if Bocchi is Blossom, but Ichiji definitely gives off Bubbles and Rio gives off Buttercup. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, so they have this band meeting and they explain they want to try to get to know each other. And honestly, okay, the dice that they pull out, I was so excited in the episode about, because it is actually something that I bought this year for my speech team because they have to practice their speeches. And so I got one of those cubes that has the little inserts that are clear around it. And I put an insert and I just put their names and one of the events that they did on the dice, and then they could roll the dice and see who's going to do what. They didn't really use it a lot, so I felt like it was a purchase that I was like, come on guys, let's use it. And they're like, no. So they're very much like Bocchi. But with that being said, I really appreciated that this episode kind of incorporated, it was very something like Ichiji being an extrovert. Of course they would do that. So the funny thing is when they get to talk about school, they don't really have much to talk about because Bocchi ended up transferring away from her last school because she didn't want her reputation to follow her and she wanted to start fresh, which is really cool. Before we talk about this next thing, I do want to point out that I'm at the point in the episode where I'm 3 minutes and 43 seconds in, and they have that big black sign above Bocchi's head, and it says, "Do not spill drinks, you're liable for damage." I love that because it's in this bar space, you are not going to get rowdy. No party time here. So that's really funny. Something that I thought was kind of crazy about this episode was that Bocchi has been commuting for 2 hours to school. 2 hours. One way. That is wild to me. I was floored. I could not believe that. Because I try to think, I think the longest I commuted in high school is I was on the bus for maybe an hour, but it was I'd get on the bus 6:45, we'd get up and get to the school at 7:45. If her classes start at 8, she is having to leave her house by 6. That is insane. And I'm no wonder, girl, you don't want to be at that school. You're having to travel all that way, and then you don't get any social interactions, and then you go home, and it feels like a big damn waste of time. And if you get out at 3, you're not getting home till 5. What? It was just wild. Absolutely wild to me. I could not believe she was doing that. So they talk about, don't you go to Shuka? And she's like, why couldn't you live around here? She's like, well, I live out of the prefecture. And they're like, a 2-hour commute is insane. And she's like, I wanted a high school where nobody knew my past. So they changed subjects and decide to talk about like what they do in their free time. And that's when Rio brings up the fact that she doesn't have any friends. And of course, Bocchi is instantly like, oh, you don't have any friends either. This is perfect. We're going to be best friends because we both are loners. We're both, the difference between loneliness and loner is something that's really cool about this episode that they explain. And I was kind of living for this because, Bocchi gets really excited to hear that Ryo-san doesn't, hang out around a bunch of people. So, Bocchi believes, she's like, oh, well, you're a loner like I am. Oh my gosh. And I love the loneliness hill with the flowers was so funny. They bring it back again with the roses and as they wilt, but the fact that it was the flowers was so funny. I thought that was hilarious. But she thinks that Rio is like her and she's lonely, which is really sad inherently. I'm like, I don't like that Bocchi is lonely. And I feel like Bocchi has a support system in front of her to kind of like help her get out of that funk, but she just hasn't quite realized it yet. So she's like, oh, we're kindred spirits. And she's like, then as Bocchi's running towards Rio, like, oh, you and I can commiserate. We can connect based on our loneliness. That's what Ichiji says on her days off. She does urban exploration, which an introvert would not do. Visits secondhand clothing shops, which if you're like me and are introverted, shopping is not your biggest friend. And then that's when Bocchi goes, oh no, she likes being alone. She's a loner. And there is a difference. I honestly think, I don't know if I would describe myself more in like the loneliness hill like Bocchi or more of a loner, because I've always found that if I need to do stuff by myself, I'm okay with it. It's, it's nice to be around people, but if I need to go shopping, I can do that by myself. I've been to the movies by myself. Like I don't need someone with me to go places. So I could be a loner. I could definitely see that. So poor Bocchi is like, oh no, I love the, the thing breaking apart and she's all by herself. The gap between the lonely and the loner is too deep and too vast to ever be traversed. So funny. She's like, I nearly fell into the trap. And Ichiji's like, are we not having fun with this conversation? So they talk about their favorite music. And of course, Ichiji's like, I like punk mellowcore, which is kind of cool. And they talk about, I like that Rio says she's been studying Saudi Arabian charts. I was like, that's so cool. Rio reminds me there was a girl that was on our team last year that she really loved like international music. And so we would have a playlist we'd listen to on the way to tournaments. And, there'd be like Taylor Swift or like 90s rock or some music like that. But then there'd be like a song in Korean or like a random song from Spain, from like the Spanish pop charts. And I'd be like, Spanish pop charts. And then like look over and this girl on our team would be like, me. And I'd be like, yes. And so she just had such a worldly taste in music. I was always in awe of like just this random music she would find that would never play in the US, that I was like, this is amazing. I love this. So she reminds me a lot of Rio in the Saudi Arabian charts. That's really cool. But yeah. And so they talk about the Seishun complex. And I was like, what is the Seishun complex? And that's when Bocchi's like inner imaginary friend, her like part of her Inside Out crew, only this time in the form of a guitar. Guitar Man's Easy to Learn Hattori Lessons, Seishun Complex Edition. Songs that trigger her Seishun complex. So the little cute guitar, I love that they put on the pool float and they say glitter-coated upbeat songs that include words like summer, blue sea, fireworks, puppy love. And it's like all this happiness and like irrelevant things that what's really sad about it is it talks about like school romance and like summertime with friends and stuff. And Bocchi cannot relate to that because of her social anxiety. And that's so sad because I hate that she doesn't want to hear those songs because it just reminds her of how lonely she is, which is really sad. So she's like, I'd rather hear songs from high school bands that talk about like the bleakness of the world. And she's like, suddenly I'd find, and also girl is kind of a music snob because she's over here like, well, if I found out a band was popular, I wouldn't like it anymore. I'm like, girl, you just want that different and misunderstood music, right? Oh my gosh. But yeah. And that's when Rio's like, rock resonates as the music of the perpetual underdog. Love it. So yeah, so they talk about how they need a vocalist. And they find out the guitarist who ran off was going to be their singer. Now, I wondered, just theorizing for next week, if the guitarist who ran off was the one with the red hair that from the OP we assume is going to end up being their vocalist anyway. Because she can play guitar as well. So I don't know if it's the same person and Bocchi's going to run into them in their high school and convince her to come back. I don't know. I feel like, and maybe here she's like, oh, well, could she be kind of like me if she ran away? But then she says, if you're really socially anxious, you can't even run away. So that's not an option either. So poor Bocchi. Bocchi is trying to connect with Rio, but she can't. She's already deciding she won't connect with the guitarist, which she hasn't even met yet face to face. And of course, Ichiji is like polar opposite of Bocchi. So there's that. But yeah. So I feel like Ichiji could sing. And then Rio, I like that Rio, what I love about Rio is that she is so overconfident as the lone wolf. She's like, well, I could sing, but I'd be so good. It would just ruin everything. I love that. I love her confidence. She's like quietly confident, which is a very scary form of confidence, but I love it. So she's like, well, you could write the lyrics, you know. It's not like you have a job on the internet that does this. I'm going to be very interested in seeing how this works for Bocchi because I feel like it's kind of being set up. Bocchi reminds me a lot of Mafiu from Given in a lot of ways, but is also very different from Mafiu as well. But the one thing of Given that is very similar is the concept of them having jobs, that they have to have a job in order to pay for the expenses. And one thing that I do like is that Given and Bocchi kind of explain the job experience in different ways. With Given, the job experience is kind of, it feels more like a transition from high school to the real world. And I say the real world, but the world after high school, where they're like, well, you need this money because of the equipment. You need money because of all the stuff that we're going to do for the gigs and all that. And it's kind of explained in a different way than Bocchi explains it. But I like that Bocchi has its own system of explanation for the jobs. They're like, well, we have a quota to sell tickets. And if we meet the ticket quota, then anything extra that we get, we split among us. So that's ideally what you want. But if it's a bad night or if people don't come to the gig, you've got to pay back for the venue, which is kind of scary. Because then if things don't work out, you're like, you know, what do? You're out the money. And we find out that Rio's family is insanely rich, so she doesn't need a job. I'm more and more fascinated and in love with Rio the longer we get into this series. So I'm going to be very excited to see more with her. But she just has like she's the stereotypical anime character that's like cool blue tone hair, family comes from money. I've seen it in a couple shows now and I'm kind of all about it. But Ichiji, meanwhile, her family seems kind of like more working class. And then Bocchi, we don't know a lot about her family. But I like the idea that they talk about getting a job to try to earn that extra money to pay for their gigs and to also help like to kind of balance that out until they get big. And I think that this is really, really important to tell people and for people to see because I hear this a lot from the generation below me that a lot of them, and I work with students with advising and things, and a lot of them want that job right out of their degree that's going to earn six figures. And I'm like, girl, I have to tell them, when I got my college degree finished, I had the same thought. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get a teaching job instantly and be making 70 grand a year and have insurance and all these benefits and la la la. And then I substitute taught for 5 years and made the salary of a McDonald's employee. And that was really rough and hard times. And you kind of have to pay your dues before you get, that's why it's so hard when people are like, well, the big problem is finding experience. You have to have experience to move up the ladder. And I'm like, yeah. So you kind of have to sort of humble yourself and go, I know I have to pay bills and I know I have to pay off, debts and stuff from college, but you have to start at the bottom rung of the ladder and you've got to work your way up. And it's work and it's hard. But if that's what you want, you got to work into it. There are people that are Nepo babies. There are people that are born into money. There are people that aren't going to have to work as hard as you. And that's, the cruelty of the world. But whenever students that I talk to are like, oh, I'm going to get hired immediately out of my degree. And I'm like, you hope you do. But sometimes you got to really work and make some, risks and decisions. So I like this idea, though, that Bocchi is open to the job. And it's so important because if you want to get to those jobs that are going to pay you what you want to get paid, there are professions where you don't have to be socially interacting with people. Like, I assume there's probably some IT jobs that don't require you to interact with a lot of people. But most jobs, you have to interact with people and you have to be able to get along with people, even if they suck. Because you'll find people in your workplace that suck and you've got to find a way to work with them. And that's just the way the world is. It's interpersonal communication. So much of it is. And so for Bocchi, who really struggles with social anxiety, this episode made me want to root for her so much because I'm like, girl, I know how that can be. Like, even me who does public speaking, there are times where I really don't want to talk in front of a crowd or in front of a certain group of people because maybe I know them or maybe there's pressure for the occasion or whatever. And so there's a lot of times that I wish I could just hand the drink on the counter like Bocchi does and just be like, okay, you don't see me, but here's your thing. Here, I did the thing that you want. Don't look at me. Like, that's such a relatable feeling in this episode. And this episode just kind of cut to my core because I was like, girl, I want to root for you because I know what that's like. Even if you like speaking, there's always a moment where you kind of feel a little dread and a little nervousness. But what I loved about this episode was she kind of overcame it. And she kind of like busted out of that shell. And it was absolutely beautiful. I loved it. So yeah. So I talk about they're going to need tens of thousands of yens before their next concert. So they have to make, a living. And I love that her biggest yell is because she has to get a job. I thought that part was great. But I also liked that HEG wasn't just going to throw Bocchi to the wolves. Because I like that HEG and Rio both seem to have a grasp on the idea that Bocchi is not socially, interacting with people a lot. She has a lot of anxiety. So they kind of do this really cool thing and do a solid for her where they're like, oh no, you can work here at the bar. Like where you're in an area that is new and unfamiliar, but you are surrounded by a support network of people that will be here to help you. And I thought that was really, really cool. I thought it was neat that she had her two bandmates there to help her. When she did say society is too scary, though, I was like, girl, I feel you, right? And she's like, here's my piggy bank. When she said that she was saving up for her wedding, and she's like, but you can have it. Girl, oh my gosh, ridiculous. And they're like, no, we're not going to take it. Although I do love the fourth wall breaking humor that this series does, where it has her like showing her trying to interact in a social environment at a job and like the way that she's animated and the way that her face looks and everything. So funny. I thought that was great. Bless her heart. And they have it like on basically a Twitter equivalent. Also, just going to point out when they do the court ruling and they like say she's going to get the death penalty for failing at her job, which the social anxiety. I did like that most of the people there kind of looked like some, annoying characters off Dan to Dan. But, if you watch Dan to Dan, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, poor Bocchi. But yeah, they're like, you'll be here with Rio and I, so it'll be fine. And I do love when they rise up around her they're like, she's like, I don't want to work. I don't want to work. I don't want to work. They're like, we can serve drinks and see all the bands and clean. And they're just kind of like, rising up on either side of her. They're like, what do you think? It felt very well, imagine Madoka Magica in that moment. And I'm not complaining. It was really, really cute. I loved it. So yeah. So she starts working at the bar. And they tell her that we'll see you the next day. And then what does this girl decide to do? The reason why she's in the frozen bath water. She's trying to give herself a cold. Girl, what you doing? And the funny thing about that, this whole junk that I have, this girl on our team and we went to the beach for nationals, and I was on the east coast of the U.S. Well, the east coast of the U.S. in April, guess what, is not very warm. Like, it was maybe 80 degrees outside, but the ocean water was like 60. So I dipped my toe in and was like, absolutely not. Not going to get in the ocean because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get in that cold water and I'm going to catch a cold. So not going to do that. And then this other girl on the team, she was like, I'm not doing that either. And we both like fist bumped. We're like, look at us being the smart, responsible people. Everybody else got in the ocean. So cut to a week later, which ones on the team are chugging down lemon ginger honey tea and don't have their voice? Me and the girl that stayed on the beach. So the moment that I saw Bocchi trying to get herself sick, I'm like, girl, that ain't gonna work. Because that's not how this goes. At least not for the first day, right? Still, I can't believe that she like put herself in front. I don't even know what those patches on her body are. Like, what are those patches? Are they just cold packs? Are they compresses? Girl, why are you trying to give yourself a cold? Because she didn't want to go to work. And then it didn't work. She had to go. I do like the shot that we have of Ichiji in her house making her own breakfast. I assume that she lived with her parents and her sister, but I don't know what the living condition with her family is. Compared to Rio, though, who we've established is very wealthy, she seems like she just lives in a modest house there. So I'm super curious what that's like for her. You've made me realize the errors of my ways. I love it. So yeah. She shows up and interacts with Ichiji's sister, has a freak out moment, which was super cute. And then I liked the sister's like Beetlejuice pants, the horizontal stripe Beetlejuice pants, or the vertical stripes. I was like, come on, girl. The fashion was giving. And I just liked her with the black-haired girl. I'm like, the moment the black-haired girl behind the stage showed up beside her, I was like, instant ship. I'm like, oh, we've got the Naruto Sasuke vibes. We've got the blonde hair and the black hair vibes. I see what you're doing, show. I'm here for it. But yeah, I love that she calls her Mango Common. That part was super cute. And then Ichiji's like, quit giving people weird names. So yeah. So Star is the bar that they work at, and they decide to get to work and start serving people. Bocchi under the table was adorable. I loved it. To be fair, whenever Ichiji's like, oh, here's where the tonic water is, here's where the soda is, here's where that is. To be fair, that was a lot for someone who's never had a job before to instantly have to pick up, because I have like worked some waitressing shifts and have helped out at events. I haven't had waitressing as a job necessarily, but I have had stints in it for like fundraisers and helping with it. And it's a hard gig to remember what people are ordering, to be able to wade through a crowd and serve people drinks and get everything right is not easy, especially for somebody that has social anxiety, has never done it before. Mm-hmm. Like tall order for Bocchi, So yeah. So she's like, I'm going to infuse my knowledge through song. I love that she makes up the song about the drinks to help her remember, where she's like, cocktails are in the rightmost shelf and tequila is fun. Girl, tequila, I tried to have that during this episode. It is most certainly not fun, but I do think that it was super cute. I also like the idea of her using songs as ways of memory, because that is true. Sometimes when you sing a song about something, you remember it a lot better. So that is a trick that you can use to help your memory. I also like that the sister immediately notices that Bocchi is actually a good performer. She's like, Ichiji's trying so hard to stop her, she doesn't realize how talented she is. But I've heard that song from somewhere. I feel like the sister and the sound manager are going to figure out Bocchi's secret identity before everybody else. And I'll be curious to see if they connect with Bocchi and they're like, hey, girl, just so you know, we know who you are. We know what you are. And she's like, what? And they're like, a YouTuber. So, yeah. So Ichiji teaches her how to do it, explains the drinks, how they are, and explains that it's hard to get just a business license for a concert venue. So they're technically a restaurant. Right? And that makes sense. But poor Bocchi. Bocchi is scared with all the people coming. She's like, I need a practice run. I love when she just hands the drinks over the counter. It's super cute. And Rio takes the tickets and does all that, which is really sweet. But yeah, I loved Bocchi's expressions throughout all of this. The way that they drew her like kind of spiraling look was really fun. So then Alexandism, which what a band name, takes the stage. The lead singer kind of reminded me of the lead character in Daokyusei, who's also in a band. So I thought that's what I could think of the whole time he was performing. But I love it. They're so they had this conversation between Ichiji and Bocchi happening where she was talking about, you know, the band. And that is kind of a cool perk that you get to hear a lot of good music that could inspire you as songwriters by singing on stage. But the band was making this commentary as they were performing, saying we're back to doing concerts. And they talked about their own, like we tried to make every single song better than our first album. But if you haven't bought it yet, we're about to play some of those songs. And then they talk about having some of their own like secondhand jobs as well. So I thought that was good that even the bands that are performing are also kind of dealing with the same thing that Bocchi's band is dealing with. Also, they established that Ichiji's sister is a tsundere, so that's going to be interesting to see where that goes. But yeah. So then I liked that Rio was like, do you want this box to put over your head while you serve? And Bocchi's like, you know, I don't want to let people down. I don't want to let you guys down for letting me have this job. And Ichiji is just such a kind soul. She's like, Bocchi, this is just your first day. It's okay. You're doing great, sweetie. And I loved that. I loved that optimism that she had throughout. That was really super cute. And she's like, you know, the reception here, they're the only times we have to interact with the customers. She's like, I want to do my best to make other people like it as well. And then they get to see the concert while the performance is going on. I just love how supportive they are. It's really super cute. So yeah, so then the song starts. The customers are all enjoying themselves. And then Bocchi's like, you know, at my concert, they paid all that money to see us. So if I stay the way I am, then the concerts aren't going to get any better, are they? I love that Bocchi is so inspired. And I love what she says here where she's like, I want to make an effort to change, but if only gradually. Like she's not trying to have like a character arc in, you know, the first episode. But she's like, if I just, you know, make little changes to myself and things just get better slowly, you know, some progress is better than no progress. And I thought that was really cute. That spoke to me and I was like, wanted to root for her so much. And so then she has the moment where she looks the customer in the eye and delivers the drink, which honestly, I'm going to be real with y'all. I loved her expression. It's a thumbnail for a reason, but I couldn't help but notice the whole time. If you've watched Puella Magi Modica Magica, you know exactly the comparison I'm making between Bocchi and the person she gave the drink to. I'm just saying. But I thought that was really super cute. And then they're like, her friends are so supportive of her. I loved when she was like the mage taking her first step in this giant path up to the next level. Thought that was amazing. Loved that. And then lo and behold, what ends up happening to her? She gets sick the very next day. I do love the title of the episode is See You Tomorrow. And it establishes that she's going to come back and keep working. And her friends are like so happy of how things worked out for her and how much growth she's done in this short amount of time. Now they just got to get the vocalist. But man, at the end of this episode when Bocchi was feeling under the weather, I know how she feels. So yeah, this episode was so cute. And I'm in love with Bocchi's character already. Honestly, I would talk so much more about it, but my voice is about to give out, y'all. I'm so sorry this episode is short, and I feel like I've let you down with this video, but hopefully you all will comment down below, and I will be able to comment back to you. So, with that being said, I'm going to go let my voice rest until it is back completely, and I can do episode 3 for you all, and it will be good. So, with that being said, I love this episode. I'm already so into this show. I cannot wait to talk about it with you more, but in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Bocchi the Rock. Bye.